My name's Grace. I'm a service manager for the Prevention and Early Intervention Services at Cambridgeshire County Council, which I will tell you a little bit more about, so don't worry if that makes absolutely no sense to you at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'll run through a presentation, and then we've got quite a bit of time at the end for you to ask any questions. So, you know, feel free to ask them as you go along. If there's anything you want to pop in the chat, and we can try and catch it up afterwards. And then, as Graham said, if you've got any sort of specific, you know, personal questions that you want to know a little bit more about, we can always follow those up afterwards. So if you want to start the presentation, Graham, that'd be great. We go on to slide 2, because you've all heard who I am now. You probably don't need to hear any more about that. So just a little bit really about what we're looking at in Cambridge and how we're working for people. So really what we're trying to do is support people to remain as independent as possible in their communities. The reason we say their communities is because for everybody, this doesn't mean their home, but it's their community. So how can we keep people living like they're living really and supporting them to remain independent? And why do we want to do this? We know people have better outcomes when they're independent and when they're supported by the community. We all know our lives are better when we have our friends, our family, our neighbours around us. So we want to try and support people to do that. Yes, it does cost the council less, which also means we can invest more into other services. But really it's about looking at what does the person want and how can we support you to get that. I think we're really trying to move away from an older approach of where the council come in, say, you need this, this and this, whereas actually I think we all know, and I think we've really learned certainly over the past 18 months, actually what's important to us is important to us, and being local, the things around us are very important. So what we try and do is we try and make things more localised to people and their areas, and we really try and focus on prevention and early intervention. What we know is supporting people in a crisis never works. You know, if you're doing crisis management, you're just going in to fix something, and that doesn't work. So we're really trying to change the way we're working. So if we go on to the next slide. Okay, so how we do this is we've got sort of a 3-tier approach. So our first tier is sort of helping you to help yourself. So this is making sure that information is available to you, that you get the support as and when you need it really, and that you can just go and find it. I think if anybody is like me, the worst thing is when you go and try and look for information and you just can't find it anywhere. So we're trying to make sure stuff's available for people and that we have it earlier so that people are informed about what's going on. And then the second approach is helping people when they need it. So this is where our prevention services come into play really, and it's supporting people with whatever they need when they need it. So this might be some short-term rehabilitation, it might be, you know, some OT, we'll go through some of that, but it's really supporting people to try and get back on their feet, get back to independence. And then our third approach is support ongoing for people. So this is where we may look at longer term care packages, personal budgets for people, but really looking at how we can make that individualised to people. So we go on to the next slide. So this is just a little bit, so the prevention and early intervention services are the ones that I'm going to talk about. So these are the ones that I cover. I'll go through them sort of relatively quickly. So if at the end you've got more questions, I'm happy to talk about them, but I don't want to bore you all with services when actually what you really want to know about is what we can do to help. So if we move on to the next one, that'd be great. Okay, so how does it all start? So when you call the council, you'll get put through to what we call our sort of contact centre, who will take any information and advice from you, and then you'll go through to our adult early help. So they support anybody over the age of 18 as sort of that front door to adult social care. So what they'll do is do sort of face-to-face or phone conversations with you. They'll try and find out a little bit more about you and focus really on how we can support people. They'll build a community action plan around you, looking at what it is that you want and how we can support you to do that. Then making ongoing referrals if needed. We also have a welfare benefits team who can support people with information and advice on any sort of benefit. Because actually what we often find is if we can increase people's income, more is available to them. So it's making sure you've got all the right things to support you. And where possible, we can help you try and fill in some forms, and we can support you with appeal decisions so that you're not left on your own to do that. Moving on. Okay. We also have a carers support team. So what we know is 3 in 5 of us at some point in our life will become a carer. What we often do is people don't realise they're a carer. You know, many of us, you know, will get married or we have family and we just think, well, that's what you do. You care for your loved ones. But what we really are saying is actually you are a carer. And without you, that person that you're supporting would need so much more support. So what we do is we work under the Care Act and we just try and look at what support we can put in for carers. So actually, can we complete an assessment? What support does that person need? Is it that we can offer long-term support? Is it they need something short-term? We also look at, you know, what-if plans, which is like emergency support if anybody had something unexpected come up. Moving on, please. Okay, we also have sensory services. So our sensory services work with anybody over 18 who are deaf-blind, deaf, hard of hearing, registered sight impaired, or experiencing vision loss. So we hold the register for sight impaired people within Cambridgeshire, as well as those with dual sensory loss. And what our sensory services team do is provide rehabilitation for people in the community, and any equipment that they might need or support that can help them to remain independent. So quite a lot of this we've been continuing to do over the pandemic, and we've managed to do kitchen skills with people over video calls on Microsoft Teams, things like that. And it's really for people when maybe they've had a loss of skill and it's trying to get them back to doing that. Because the last thing you want is somebody coming into your life and doing it for you. So it's supporting you to get back on your feet, as well as providing awareness and training. Moving on, please. Okay. So we also have a reablement team who provide short-term care support for people within their own homes, encouraging people to become independent and get back on their feet and learn new ways of managing tasks. So this will often be after maybe a hospital admission, or if you've been unwell, it's sort of getting people to relearn skills. It may also be that somebody had somebody in their life that's always done something. So maybe your parent, you've always lived with your parents and they always did something, or you always lived with your spouse and now you need support to do that on your own. We're never too old to learn new skills, as they say. So the team have about 300 service users at any one time, and have a 70% independence rate. So most people that come through the service do end up going to be independent. Sorry, yeah, what do the abbreviations mean? I will go through those. So we also refer to the tech team, which is technology enabled care services, the OT team, which is occupational therapy, sensory services, health services, and I think, and RBT is reablement. So sorry about any abbreviations. I should know better than that. So thank you for picking up on that. It's also a service that's registered by CQC to ensure that we're doing everything that we can, really. And it's about getting people back on their feet. So moving on. We also have an assessment team off the back of that. So if you go through reablement and you do need long-term care, then the team will come in, they will help support you to identify what your care needs are, and then they'll help you get that support going onwards, really. If we move on, you don't need to know too much about them. We also have a support team that help people in Little Hay Prison as well, and provide support there. We've recently had a really good review helping people to get reabled. Moving on, that's all right. Okay, so we also have an occupational therapy service, or OT, as you saw before. And what our OT service do is they work really closely with our reablement team, trying to look at getting people to recover. We look at minor adaptations and equipment within people's homes, as well as any sort of rehabilitation or support or advice we can give people to try and get them back on their feet and working. And sometimes it's following falls, it's supporting people on the falls pathway to ensure that, you know, they're having less falls. How can we support you to get more mobile about? Moving on, please. Okay, and then the bit that I'm sort of here to talk a little bit more about is the technology-enabled care services. So you'll probably often hear this referred to as tech. So what tech means is just literally technology-enabled care. And what this is where we can use technology to support people to either facilitate new skills or to keep existing skills, really. The reason we use tech a lot of the time is it's less intrusive than care. So actually, rather than carers coming into your house, if you can have a piece of technology that can support you, most people would prefer that. So we always try and work from a tech-first approach. So actually, what can we do to support you to remain independent where you don't need someone coming and interfering in your life and you can take control of that again? We look at what is the outcome that that person wants to meet. So it's not what we think your outcome is. What is important to you? What do you want to achieve? And we look at, you know, what's going on in your life? What are the risks? What can we do to support? We provide a variety of services, which I will go through. And actually in 2021, considering pandemic and everything, we managed to save the council 3.66 million of avoided costs through tech, which is great. But more importantly, we had almost 2,000 outcomes for people that resulted in less hospital admissions. And over 1,000 times the technology we put into people supported informal carers. So actually, it's not just about social care, it's supporting people, and how can tech do that? So next slide, please. Okay, so different types of tech, what's out there? So there is a variety of tech out there. Some things are really easy. People can purchase them themselves. And every year we always put out sort of a Christmas wish list where we can suggest things that people may want to buy themselves. We also have a Safe and Well service, which you can go online, look at all different equipment that's available. Things that are sort of readily available on the market is what we would suggest somebody would purchase themselves. So that may be things which you can see on the screen, such as calendar clocks, which will tell somebody what the date is, what the time is. 1 cup boilers, often people will find that kettles are too heavy to lift up. So actually, if you can just have a 1 cup boiling kettle, that's perfect. Timers, the other thing on there, so toilet motion sensor lights. So often what you find is when people have dementia, they struggle with light. So actually having a lit up toilet will support somebody to find the toilet in the middle of the night, which if any of you have ever had children or anybody stay around, the less you have to clean a toilet probably makes it better if somebody can find it. So those sorts of things we might support people to purchase themselves. We then have different technology that can support with prompts and reminders. So I've got a couple of bits. So here, you know, here's your handy one from earlier. So this is what we call a Pivotel. So this you can fill up and it will have all the days of the week. You can set times, you can set dates. And what will happen is it locks the medication away. So you put your medication in, it's filled by the pharmacy, it locks it away. And then say Monday 9 o'clock, I need to take my medication. It will move round my Monday 9 o'clock medication. It will then beep at me and flash, and then it will open up. I tip out my medication. Once my medication's gone, it will lock again and it will open only again when my next medication's required. So we have prompts and reminders like that. We also have apps that people can use that will help support people and tell people what to do. We also have telephone calls prompting people. So it might be that we know that it's great that the Pivotel can beep, but actually what we need is someone to call. So rather than the family member having to call someone to say, you need to get ready because you're going to day centre at 10 o'clock, we can have a service that will call the person and say, you know, 10 o'clock, you need to get ready, you're going to day centre. We also have hydration prompts. So here's handy one on my bottle just to show you. And what this will do is it will flash to remind you to take a drink. So this is brilliant for people that maybe forget to drink every so often. It's great for us even in the offices, because what you tend to find is when you're busy, you don't realise you haven't had a drink in hours. Really good, and the hospitals certainly love them in this sort of weather, because what we tend to find is, you know, it just keeps people hydrated and keeps them going. We also have smart solutions. So I do have, and these are very loved by people, so I will put it on. So we have robotic cats. So don't know if you can hear it. It meows, it purrs, it moves. So these are things that people can buy for themselves, but we can also supply if we feel there's a need. I'll show you a video a little bit later on about somebody using them. But what we tend to find is they're really good for people that maybe get anxious or aren't happy being on their own, things like that. And actually, what's really good is people can sit there, they can stroke it, and they just feel comforted having something. Particularly if maybe somebody's had cats all their lives or had animals all their lives, maybe they have dementia now and can't support a pet, just having something that can support them really. We also have lots of smart solutions that can go around people's homes. So most people know nowadays of the Ring doorbells that can show you somebody that's at the door, things like that. There are bed sensors out there. You know, lots of people, I know myself, I have an activity tracking watch that can tell me how much I've walked, how much I've slept. Everything really can be controlled really. We also have remote monitoring that we can provide as well for assessment purposes, which is sort of sensors. So we can use our sensors within people's homes, maybe for a week, to try and gather what that person does during the week. So we can find out, is the person leaving their going into their kitchen? Are they opening their fridge? Are they having something to eat? And we can do that all through motion sensors. The reason we do motion sensors and not cameras is it's just less intrusive into people's lives, really. Other things that we have are like bed sensors as well. So we have mats that you can put under a chair or bed that will beep if the person's got up and maybe for too long. So quite often what we'll do, if you have somebody that you're maybe concerned might get out of bed and have a fall going to the toilet or something like that, we can put a sensor on the bed. We can set it to say, you know, can it go off after half an hour if the person hasn't returned to bed? It can either go off and alert another person in the property, or it can be linked up so that it can go through a Lifeline service, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, and alert somebody as to what's going on. So there's lots of equipment out there. I could tell you about a million different things, but really it's working out what's best for the person. And what we do at Tech is an assessment's completed around what support the person needs, and then we look at what technology could best meet that need. Sometimes it's not that technology's best, and we have to look at something else. Any tech provided by the service is free of charge and is on a loan basis. So when you no longer need it, it's returned. So moving on. That's all right. So a little bit about Lifelines. So people may have heard about Lifelines. They're a pendant alarm. So you hang it around your neck. Sometimes people have them around a wrist. And it's so if somebody has a fall, you press it, you touch it. Now, lots of people, I think, often think they're for older people, you know, things like that. One thing I will say is, if anybody is like me, I have a tendency to slip down the stairs. I'm very clumsy, never have my telephone on me, you know, go out and about. And actually it's, what would you do in that situation? What would happen if you had a fall at home, you can't get to your phone, what are you going to do? So that's when we would maybe say to someone, consider a Lifeline, think about how it can support you. So the Lifeline attaches through to a box, which is attached to a call centre. So what happens is there is someone at the end of the call centre. So as soon as a button is pressed, somebody from the call centre will call through to the Lifeline box and make sure that you're okay. Either you can go, yeah, I'm absolutely fine, pressed it by mistake, my fault, I'm sorry. Or they can, work out that you're not okay. If they don't get a response as well, they'll also make sure what's going on. So what that Lifeline centre will do is, if you've had a fall or you need support, doesn't have to be a fall, they will then have a list of who to call in an instance to provide you support. So it might be you've got a family member that can be called. It might be you need an ambulance to be called. Or we also have a team called our Enhanced Response Service, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that can also come out and support you if it's a non-emergency. The Lifeline through Cambridgeshire County Council is provided for a 6-week trial service in which we fund for 6 weeks to try and find out how somebody finds the service. We'll come and fit it. We also fit a key safe for somebody as well. And then if it's something you want to carry on, it's £5 a week. If you don't want to carry it on, you cancel the service, it's absolutely fine. This next video is a video of a user from the Technology Enabled Care Services, and her family have sent this in to us. So this is a lady named Doreen. Doreen has dementia. And prior to having her cat, Doreen had really withdrawn. It was the pandemic, her family weren't able to visit, and she would sit staring out the window all day. She also wouldn't use her hands and she wouldn't interact with anybody. So her family said, what can we do? So we tried giving her the cat. And as you can see, Doreen and the cat are now not to be separated ever. She loves the cat. So this lady, Madeline, is partially sighted and she uses her smartphone to support. So I mentioned earlier the Enhanced Response Service, or ERS, and they respond, so they're the people that respond to the Lifeline call alarms. So they will go out when it's a non-emergency, and they will go out for supporting people. So it could be if someone's had a fall, it could be if the person needs some personal care or support, or just some reassurance, really. The service is free of charge. It's linked up to your Lifeline. And there is always somebody on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It really does stop people needing to call out an ambulance, really. So in 2021, they supported over 3,000 cases and informal carers in 132 of those cases. More often than not, they stop an ambulance from needing to attend, and it just gives people and their families support to know that there's somebody there. So if your family are busy, they can't come. If you don't have anybody that could respond, the Enhanced Response Service are there as a backup and can go out if you need support. Next slide. So how can we support? How does it all tie up? So now we've become a Lifeline, it gives us a lot more chance to support people, really. Because our Lifeline goes through to our 24-hour support, we know that there's somebody always there. We can find out if you're getting help. We also get what we call frequent caller lists on the Lifeline. So we know every time somebody's pressed their Lifeline, and we can start to predict when somebody's care needs are maybe increasing, or if maybe they're becoming unwell. If they're starting to need help more often, we know that that's happening and we're able to help support somebody. If we know they're falling more, we can refer them on to the falls team. We can also find out, do they need any other equipment going in? And we're just there to support, and it gives an overall package to that person. Okay, next slide. So just a couple of case examples, really. So first off was Mr. X, and this was actually a case that I dealt with myself. So I feel quite close to it because I don't get to deal with many cases anymore, which is quite nice. And I spoke to this lovely gentleman, and he did have a terminal diagnosis and also had some mental health concerns. He was very, very anxious about remaining at home because he was quite unwell. He had a medical assistance dog, and he had 3 daughters actually, and they were all under 30. And his thing was he didn't want to be a burden to his children. He knew that they had lives to lead, And as much as they wanted to support him, he didn't want it. So one of the things he said to me is, I've had a lot of falls, and what I don't want is, I'm scared to go and have a shower anymore, because my fear is I fall in the shower, I'm having to call out my daughters. None of us want to have it where I call out my daughters because I've had a fall in the shower. So we did an assessment for him. And what we did is we got him a Lifeline detector and we got him a falls detector. And we linked it up to ERS as well. So depending on where he fell, he could choose then, when he spoke to the call centre, whether he wanted to call his children or whether he wanted ERS to come out and support him as well. And also we then said to him, you know, if you feel your needs are increasing, you can come back, you can talk to us. We'll know that through the Lifeline. We can then get you the care you need. But for now, you know, you want to remain independent, we'll support you to do that. Another case was Mr. T. So he was a 90-year-old who was very keen to remain at home. He was very adamant. He did not want to go into a care home, but he'd been falling a lot and his family were really, really anxious about him. And they were talking about care and they were saying, we appreciate you don't want it, but we really think it's the way. Our enhanced response service were called out to a Lifeline alert. And when they went out, they said, okay, we really think you need a referral to our falls team. We need to find out a little bit more why you're falling. We're also going to speak to your GP and see what we can do to try and stop you falling. And they introduced the Reablement team to try and come in and support him to get back on his feet. So Reablement worked with him about different ways about managing around the house to try and prevent his falls. And in the end, at the 6-week review, he and his family were really happy that he didn't need the support ongoing and that he wasn't having falls anymore. So he went from almost needing residential care to completely stopping having any care at all and continued to live independently. And then the final one is about Mr. A. So he was an 80-year-old who had been sleeping in his chair. He was having frequent falls and he had a Lifeline that alerted to ERS. So ERS team went out. And when they came out, they said, we think we need to have a chat with the occupational therapist, if that's okay, to look at what equipment we could put in to try and support you mobilising around, stop you having falls, and if there's any adaptations that could be made. A falls team referral was also made and a referral to the tech team was made. And in the end, he got a chair sensor. And what we found is the sensor wasn't alerting quickly enough for when he was having a fall. So we changed that out. We looked at what different things we could put in. And once again, he remained at home, falls reduced, which really was everything he wanted. And then I think, is there another slide? No. So that's it. I'm really sorry. You've probably all heard me mutter on.
And our CEO, Sandy Smith, has put her hand up. So, Sandy.
Lovely, thank you, Grace, so much, and thanks, Graham. I absolutely love the cat. The slide with all the gizmos. I could have done with a demo of each. Oh, he's really gorgeous. I could have done with a demo of each of them. I've got a very basic question, which is about, we cover Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So I'm just checking, does your service cover Peterborough as well?
So we have two different services. So we have a Cambridgeshire and a Peterborough service. So with regard to tech, the Peterborough service is a little bit smaller and runs slightly differently, just in the sense that, so in Cambridgeshire, we have a dedicated tech team, so they do everything. In Peterborough, it's done more by the workers that go out and do the assessments. Most of the equipment is the same. Some of the more advanced epilepsy sensors and things like that are a little bit different in Peterborough, just because of how health fund Peterborough as opposed to Cambridge, unfortunately. I hate to say that, but that is the case. But yeah, we do cover both.
Okay, hopefully there might be a bit more standardisation as we get integration across health and social care in the very near future.
We are very much trying to push for Peterborough to align with Cambridgeshire as much as possible.